me say it's a blessing for me to be here. Give another hand for my dear sister Mary Warlick, CEO of the One Club. Indeed, indeed, indeed. I want to salute Sister Tracy Smith, who's been so very kind. Give her a hand, give her a hand. Oh, yes. There's Brother Pablo as well. I don't know where he is, but he's been so very kind, and Joni and all the others. But I'm just so very blessed to be, and Jimmy Smith. I want to acknowledge Jimmy Smith, because it was Jimmy Smith's relation to the great artist and funk master Bootsy Collins that not only facilitated my coming, but Bootsy is a dear brother. He and I worked many a time in the studio. I don't know if you know his latest album, Funk Capital of the World, which was always on the one. But most importantly, I want to zero in this morning on the young people here of all colors, but of course I'm zeroing in on young black people precisely because where are all the blacks? Here are all the black people, and the question is, what do we do with this moment? I told my dear sister Mary, I said, when you introduce me, don't mention the degrees so much, but let people know that I am who I am because somebody loved me. Somebody cared for me. Somebody attended to me. Somebody zeroed in on me. And we need more young people who are cared for, attended to, so that you can unleash your creativity. You can believe in yourself and understand that you come from a great tradition of people who, against unbelievable odds, against deep levels of adversity, could straighten your backs up and let the world know that you have a voice, not just an echo. The anthem of black people is what lifts every, not just echo. Which means you are to be an original, and I'm talking to all young folk now. But we're going to learn from the black tradition. We're going to learn from the black freedom movement. You're original, not a copy. And this is one of the challenges of young black folk these days is what? Too many copies and not enough originals. Bootsy Collins, Curtis Mayfield, Marvin Gaye, Nina Simone, Teddy Pendergrass. What is it about them? They're not just old school like me. They were originals. And the question is, how do you keep that tradition going? And they begin with one fundamental question. Echoes line 38a of Plato's Apology. The unexamined life is not worth living. The examined life is painful. Therefore, what does it mean to be human? There's no one like you. There will never be anyone like you. There's no accident that the English word human comes from the Latin word humando. Humando means what? Burying. Because we are beings toward death. We're not here that long. So the question becomes, what does it mean to be a featherless, two-legged, linguistically conscious creature born between urine and feces? That's who we are. I put on my three-piece suit, act like I'm so big and bad, but if it wasn't for my mama's love push that got me out, I wouldn't be here. That's why I spend so much time with the funk masters. We all emerge in the funk. No matter who you are, in your mama's womb with all the stank and blood and funk and love. That's humbling, isn't it? I know you're young and it's early in the morning. I don't want to get too funky, but the last thing you want when you're talking about black people is to be deodorized and sanitized and sterilized. You got to keep it real. You got to keep it truthful. You got to be honest. You got to keep it funky. Black folk wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the funk. To look beneath the lies, beneath the mendacity, beneath the falsity and say, oh, lo and behold, I'm committed to truth. And what is truth? The condition of truth is always to allow suffering to speak. If you want the truth about your life, you better come to terms with your suffering and not allow the suffering to have the last word. You want the truth about America? Get beneath the lies. Keep track of the suffering. Keep track of what's going on the reservation, the brown barrios, the black hoods, our poor white brothers and sisters in Appalachia, working people. What is going on with them? That reveals so much of the truth. What's happening in the prisons? What's happening with too many young folk of all colors? Unloved, uncared for, unattended to, and therefore subject to the dominant forces of our society, which are what? Market forces of buying and selling, and not attending to enough the fundamental issues that the great W.B. Du Bois raised: integrity, honesty, decency. Du Bois at 89 years, you all know the great W.B. Du Bois, right? Give Brother Du Bois a hand. 95 years old and struggling. He's 89 years old. He raises a questions. I've been wrestling with these queries, he says, for all of my life. What are the queries, Brother Du Bois? How does integrity face oppression? What does honesty do in the face of deception? What does decency do in the face of insult? How does virtue meet brute force? Now, of course, he's talking about a context of what? He's talking about a context of black people being terrorized and traumatized and stigmatized for 400 years, but not ever viewing ourselves solely as victims. We may have been victimized, but we're not victims solely. We are agents. We're subjects. We're willing to think for ourselves. We're willing to act for ourselves. And when we think for ourselves, we end up generating consequences and effects for everybody. That's the interplay between ROOTES. How many know about Alex Haley's Roots television show? Going back to your roots. You all know what I'm talking about. ROOTS connected to ROUTES. The routes that you have to take. And when you don't know what your roots are, then you end up with misguided routes. But when you're in connection with your roots, then the routes that you take allow you to be yourself, to hold on to the best of your integrity, your honesty, and your dignity. Why? Because the temptations and the deceptions are vast. And you lose a sense of yourself. And it's not just a matter of being successful. I want each and every one of you to be highly successful in one of the most difficult industries, the advertising industry in America. In a capitalist society obsessed with money, 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 me, cream, cash rules everything around me, but it doesn't have to rule me, because I want to be tied to integrity, honesty, and dignity. Yes, I want my Benjamins, but I don't want my last name to be Benjamin. I don't know what your last name is, but it has something to do with the love of your mama and daddy and grandmama and granddaddy. And you all understand what I'm talking about. It's not just a question of being successful, even though I want it for each and every one of you. The question will be, what will you be faithful to? What kind of person will you be as you ascend to the highest heights, given the impediments, given the obstacles? The legacy of white supremacy is real, even though white supremacy is a lie. The legacy of male supremacy is real, even though male supremacy is a lie. Same is true in any form of xenophobia, be it against Arab and Muslim brothers and sisters, be it against Jewish or Catholic brothers and sisters. It's wrong, and yet we know it operates every day. And yes, we got a black president, beautiful thing, symbolic breakthrough. Brother Barack, Sister Michelle, got the two precious kids in the White House built by black slaves. But just a black face in a high place doesn't mean that the legacy of white supremacy has been brought to an end. And just as you ascend to the highest levels, I come back 25 years from now, Brother Stanford Moore, one of the great towering figures in the history of advertising, Tom Burrell, Roy Easton, the Jackie Robinson of it. We come back 25 years ago, Brother Moore, and we look at the young folk. What you doing? What kind of persons are you? How high did you ascend? What were you faithful to Or were you so thoroughly seduced just by narrow conceptions of success, you lost a sense of from whence you came, what your roots actually are, the tradition that produced you, the grand effort to preserve your integrity, honesty, and decency tied to virtue. I'm not talking about being pure at all. All of us are cracked vessels. In fact, I'm a Christian. I was a gangster before I met Jesus, and now I got gangster proclivities. Just a redeemed sinner, that's all. All of us fall short. All of us have faults and foibles. But if we have the courage to think for ourselves, the courage to be honest, and attempt to be decent, not to be obsessed with the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught, get over by any means, just about money, 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 wealth, 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 as opposed to money, wealth, and integrity, honesty, decency. And I salute the One Club for bringing us together. And at the same time, the truth-telling that needs to take place is going to push us all against the wall. Why? Because in the history of this nation, it is still very, very difficult to disclose and reveal the very deep challenges and the institutional obstacles still operating. And let's just be honest about it. It's not just a matter of the 1% at the top owning 42% of the wealth, or 1% at the top that received 95% of all the income growth in the last 3 years. What does that mean? That means 99% of the population fighting for 5% of the wealth. What does that generate? Not just intense competition. There's a whole lot of grubby activity going on because they're fighting for crumbs. Working class people's wages stagnating for 30 years. Profits way up at the top. Political parties tied to those at the top. Any talk about poverty? 40% of young black children living in poverty, 39% of young red and brown children living in poverty, 22% of all of America's children living in poverty, each child precious and priceless, no matter what color, in the richest nation of the history of the world. To me, I'm old school, that's morally obscene and spiritually profane. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I call it a Keith Sweat moment. Something just ain't right. What you gonna do? Where's the righteous indignation? Where's the courage? It's what I love about Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer. What did they say? They taught us the attempt to have integrity means you are to be not well adjusted to injustice, but maladjusted to injustice. You are not to be well adapted to indifference to other people's suffering. You are to be maladjusted to indifference. And it's so easy to ascend to the top, turn your back, and be indifferent to other folk catching hell, both within the industry as well as outside of it, your fellow citizens. And of course, I have an international view. I'm talking about people all around the world. In Somalia and Yemen and Pakistan, the West Bank and Tel Aviv, Buenos Aires and Johannesburg, Guatemala and Ethiopia, a cosmopolitan view. That is the best of the tradition that produced me, which is the black freedom movement, which is the black prophetic tradition. And for me, the model is always the musicians. I decided when I was 19 years old, I sat down and talked with my brother. I'm from Sacramento, California. Mom and dad from Jim Crow, Louisiana. There used to be a brother play organ for my church, Shiloh Baptist Church, who's known to the world as Sylvester Stewart. Known to us as Sylvester Stewart, is known to the world as Sly Stone. Anybody know Sly Stone? Everyday people. Thank you for letting me be myself. You can make it if you try. I won't sing for you, but check it out on Google. On Google's. But that tradition says what? You have to be true to the voices that emerge. Advertising is about voices. Which voices will emerge? Will those voices have quality, courage? Will they be truth-telling, or will they simply be adaptive to the present moment? You see, that's why I started with voices, your voices. If you get a chance tonight, listen to David Ruffin of the Temptations on your computers. Just listen to that voice. You'll hear a militant tenderness. Echoes of Try a Little Tenderness by Otis Redding. Listen to David Ruffin's voice. You'll hear subversive sweetness. You'll hear a radical gentleness of a people who have not been treated gently or sweetly or lovingly, and unloved people who have learned at our best to love ourselves and therefore love others, which means we're willing to tell the truth and bear witness and therefore take a risk. There will be many moments in your careers where you have to answer that question. Will I take a risk for integrity and truth, or will I remain silent just to move to the top?